Hi everyone, it's Deb with iClimb and welcome to more new exercises. Today I want to work on your kinetic chain, which means the chain from one end to the other and how they all work as a unit. In this case, it's going to be the hip, the knee, the foot, and the ankle. A lot of times you don't realize how much that's all connected until you start trying to get things to work as a unit. A lot of you, feet are turned out, pronated, ankles are collapsing in, maybe the knees are in, maybe the knees are out, the hips are rotated, and they may be tilted, who knows, or a combination of the above. When all of those things aren't working, it's like trying to get train tracks that all the wheels are facing different directions. You've got to have that chain of wheels, if you will, all working in the same direction. So part of what we're going to gain here is that kinetic chain integrity from the hip to the foot. Plus, again, this is one that I initially created for kinetic chain, and I started noticing how much foot ankle mobility was increasing. So it's also for that as well. So this position, you're in a prone position, in other words, face down, and I know a lot of you don't like that or haven't been there in a long time. I would highly recommend it because one of the best things about that is that it opens up your hips. The vast majority of you have hip flexors that are excessively tight, which is part of your low back issues. So just lying on the floor and all you're really doing is allowing gravity instead of being bent here, you're allowing gravity by laying face down to open that up. And some of you will feel that in low back, and again, that's fine because as these let go, some things are happening back here as well. All right, so we're gonna go face down. All right, and I tell people too, the other thing too is realize this position, if it's a challenge, is an exercise by itself. Anytime you take those arms up, you're always changing the position of the scapula and the entire rib cage. Most of you, your scapula are protracted, they're out here, they're too far forward. Anytime you raise the arms up, you're changing that position and getting them back more where they belong. So this can be an exercise by itself. Also, when you get here, pay attention. What do I feel? Is there a gap between the floor and my hips? The majority of you are going to say yes. Notice how much that is. A lot of you, there'll be more gap on one side than the other. That needs to close. Those hip flexors need to open up. And the next thing is my feet. I want the tops of your feet, not the toes. I want the tops of the feet on the floor. For a lot of you, you're going to notice that there's a difference in the angle of one foot versus the other. There's more contact on one side of my foot than the other. The goal is that you be able to roll them out with no problem. A lot of you will start up here and that'll change. So what I want you to do is just take your chin or your forehead on your hands. Optimally, if the chin is up, there's more engagement in the cervical paraspinals. That's optimal. If that's not comfortable, go to your forehead. But I would encourage you to at least part of the time drop your chin to your arms instead of your forehead. Just again, because there's more work in those cervical paraspinals. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. You probably need to be doing it because it's weak. So start with your head, chin or forehead, and I'm going to do chin just so that I can chat with you a little bit. On my hands, and I'm going to put my big toes touching and my heels falling out. Now, a lot of you, this by itself is going to be a challenge. That's okay. The other thing that happens is it helps to open up the hips. So what I want you to do, and this is easier said than done because I watched it several times, is to try and bring your heels together and drop them open. And bring your heels together and drop them open. So really what you're doing, again, is you're trying to get from the hip to the foot to work as a unit. Pull the heels together, drop it open. Bring the heels together and drop it open. Just so you know, again, some of you will end up starting up here, but notice the more you do, the more mobility you get in the feet, ankles. The more those feet loosen up, the more your hips are going to loosen up. If you notice something in low back, again, that doesn't mean don't change it. The other thing too is as you do this one and you bring that in, notice, is one easier than the other, or do I feel like I'm pulling more to one side? Try to keep it centered as best you can. Again, this is one of those you don't think looks that difficult, but if everything's not working as a unit from the hip to the foot, this is going to be a challenge. But everyone I've done this with always said I noticed a huge difference in how much looser my feet ankles are. So you pull the heels together, drop it open. Pull together and drop it open. And you're just going to do that until you feel like the tightness is either gone or at least minimalized. Now, since we're already here, and again, paraspinals. The strongest muscles in your body should be your paraspinals and your glutes. This one's going to get both of them. This one is infant. We've done this before. This is a good sequence to put in here. So after we loosen things up here, we're going to go to infant. So the head comes up first and the shoulders go back. Now, without using my hands, I'm going to use the paraspinals, the muscles that run from here to my tailbone, to lift myself off the floor. And then I'm going to hold that without holding my breath, just a few seconds, and then I'm going to lower. And I'm going to lift my head, pull my shoulders back, and then I'm going to lift. Now, a lot of you are going to feel it in your low back. That doesn't mean don't do it. There's probably some imbalances there, and when you contract those muscles in the low back, it's helping to stabilize your lumbar spine and your sacrum. You need to do this one. This is about as foundational as it gets. This is why infants don't slouch. This is why toddlers can sit for hours on end without leaning on anything, because that's one of the first exercises. They don't call it an exercise. It's just foundational. It's just strengthening those paraspinals. So the head is up, the shoulders are back, and then you're lifting from the paraspinals. And you're going to feel your glutes tighten up, and that's perfectly fine. And you're going to drop. The other thing that happens here, because I'm shortening the back side, is I'm lengthening the front side. So you're going to notice that the front of your hips are a lot flatter to the floor when you finish. Now, if lifting yourself up with your paraspinals, you're only here, that's perfectly fine. Start somewhere. Try not to push. It's not about the arms. The muscles in the torso are the drivers for your arms and your legs. Make sure it's the paraspinals that's lifting you up. Again, this is foundational. So you're lifting, head up, shoulders back. And if this is a real challenge for you, start here and then progress. Once this gets easier and you feel like you're using muscle, in other words, you're not just pushing yourself up with your hands, then you can start lifting. But start somewhere. This is not easy for most people, but this is foundational. And a lot of times people will feel like they get cramps in their feet, things like that. Play around with it, loosen it up. Sometimes it's in feet, sometimes it's in calves. Most of the time it's feet. But again, there's things going on in your hips that are opening up that are not used to it. So you're lifting, shoulders back, and lifting up, straight ahead, not holding your breath. And you're going to lower. Okay, the last thing we're going to do in this sequence is we're going to do kneeling groin. Now in this one, what I suggest for some of you that feel like balance is an issue is that you get a chair or something of that nature to put your hand on, all right? Now in kneeling groin, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to open up the front of the hips, all right? And I'm going to face forward for now, because I want you to see, because a lot of you're going to have a foot that's over here off to the side. That back foot needs to be in line with this same hip. In this case, it's the right. That'll change your balance. You don't realize that, but it will. Now, the front foot, all right, is going to be forward of the other one. It's not going to be foot underneath the knee like we do most of the time. So this back foot, the heel's in line with my sit bone, and my shoulder. If I need, balance, I can put my hand on a chair or something of that nature, all right? And then what I'm going to do is I want to pull my shoulders back a little bit, but I'm going to drop my hips forward. A lot of you are going to feel a huge stretch in this. Realize is that as I do that, I'm also getting engagement in my glutes, which is a good thing. And a lot of you are going to feel a stretch down the front of the leg in the quad. Again, if you need to hold on something, that's perfectly fine. But you're going to hold that. Again, you can adjust this one according to what you can handle. Just change the physics a little bit. If it feels like it's too tight, that means you really need to do it. But just work at it as progression. So I'm going to drop it forward, drop my hips forward. All this opens up. If you feel like you're leaning one side or another, so if I feel like I'm leaning to the right, it's my left shoulder that keeps me stable. Vice versa. If I feel like I'm leaning left, it's my right shoulder. All right? But you want to get to the point where, again, this can be a balance exercise for a lot of you. On that front foot, don't curl your toes. Make sure they're flat and open. And you're just going to hold that. And then, of course, you're going to switch to the opposite side. So now the right leg for me is going to go forward. I make sure that back foot is lined up. Front foot is in front of the knee. I'm going to keep my torso nice and tight. Drop my hips forward. And open up those hips. And I know a lot of you don't like being on the floor, but someday you may get there without, and it may not be on purpose, so you really need to do some things on the floor. Get comfortable being there, and there's a lot of value to that because gravity will help you in a lot of ways. All right, so that's your sequence, and come back soon for more new exercises.